Hello and welcome to Designer-Friendly jQuery Plugins. This is an online course through How Design University. My name is Patrick McNeil and I'll be kind of your host. Much of this course is actually going to be video based because it's just far easier to understand the material if we do it in video format. And so you'll be hearing from me quite a bit over the next few weeks. And so I thank you for joining us and I hope you enjoy this particular course. Now, as the title says, we are going to focus on jQuery plugins, and I've actually hand selected a rather large range of plugins covering various topics. A lot of them are real sort of hot topics like sliders and image rotators and this sort of thing. But I've also opted to include a pretty large range of plugins that I find to be incredibly practical. And so they might not be the most exciting in the sense that they appear that like kind of crazy or do some visual effect, but at the end of the day, they do something that's incredibly practical. So there's kind of a practical side to this. Along the way, though, I've made careful selection, if you will, of each plugin so that we're not covering like 25 different jQuery plugins for image slider, for example, because there's about a bazillion of them to pick from. Instead, I've focused in on just one or two of each kind of item that really sort of embody the very best of that certain type of plugin, and even better that they're very designer friendly, because as you'll find, jQuery plugins are not all equal. Some of them are rather simple to implement and easy to understand. Others are very difficult. Some of this comes down to the documentation. Other times it's the actual plugin that makes itself kind of lends itself to either easy or sort of difficult usage. So along the way, we're going to cover about 26 different jQuery plugins that cover a wide range of things. And so I've actually built a little mini site, and the link to this is actually in the course material. And what this is, it's a landing page on my website that actually links to it links to the actual solutions, if you will, for what we're actually going to build. So you can go see what the effect is, you can interact with it, you can see how I've coded it. You're going to get a download of all this material as well, but here you'll be able to see them sort of live in action, if you will. So for example, one of the first things we're going to do is this nice little menu plugin. You can see here, we get a menu that pops out to the side. Now you'll notice here that this is fairly bare bones, and this is actually intentional because a lot of plugins provide demos like this one here, which is this is a really cool plugin. If you start typing something, you can see that the text animates in a really cool way. And this is a regular input box. But if you actually get the code for this, it's actually really difficult to determine what parts of the code go with the plugin versus which parts are just for the presentation of the demo. And so if you want it to look totally different, it can be really difficult. So in this case, our example, let's see if I can find where that one actually is. We actually built a much more sort of basic version. The effects are still there, but you can see here that we've isolated the design a little bit more. So that's sort of one of the themes throughout all this, is these will be, sometimes they'll appear a little bit dry, but that's all intended so that you can easily plug it into an existing product, because you don't always want to use the skin that it maybe comes with. And this is a perfect example. This may not be the look and feel that you need, but you need that particular sort of effect or result. And so that's sort of the theme, I guess, of the plugins. Another sort of kind of key thing to understand is I had to pick between sort of a recipe approach where I just provide you like plug in this snippet, and this snippet, and boom, it works. I had to kind of balance that with step-by-step instructions as to how I actually got to that code. If we did the full-on instructions, we'd only be able to cover a very few actual plugins because it would just take so much time to do that. So I've sort of opted for kind of a hybrid in the middle. I'll show you some of how I get to the results, but along the way I'll also teach you kind of like why or how maybe something particularly works. And so this, in the end, you'll have gone through 26 different plugins. You'll have covered a huge range of like types of plugins and different types of instructions, and because different plugins use sort of a different model, if you will, for how they work. And hopefully by the end, you'll start to recognize some very serious patterns, and you'll be able to then approach other plugins on your own. Now, obviously, I've hand selected all these plugins to be some of the easiest to use. So you might be happy to know, if you will, if you try this later on, to realize that to get to the 26 that I have, I probably tried out about 100 of them. And so I would maybe download them and get started and realize that, either I was having trouble with it or it was too complicated or it didn't work as expected. And so I would ditch the plugin and move on to another one. So I really did a lot of work vetting the plugins. And so this makes the list somewhat useful in and of itself. Combined with the instructions, hopefully you'll be able to accomplish quite a bit through this material here. So that's sort of my introduction to the course. I hope that you enjoy this, and I look forward to working with you over the next 4 weeks to implement some interesting jQuery plugins.